So, guys, today when we're looking at Harbor Me, right, we're going to be looking at this idea of what is the one connection that you can make from the text that you're reading to your own life. What I love about this book specifically is that I can make so many connections to life, okay, and what I'm reading. And so, because I can understand it, I can feel it. It's just what we do, and it's awesome. So, we're going to keep along with that idea. Okay, we're going to be listening to this story, and in the back of our minds, we are thinking about real life connections. I do this with post-it notes. I wish you guys could see like what my desk looks like, but it is covered in post-it notes. For me, it's the quickest and easiest way to jot things down, and then I can go back into my reader's response journal and write even a better entry. So if I just do a quick stop and jot, meaning when I find a connection and I write it down, I can then go back and really dive deep into what my response is. It doesn't have to be like such a quick snapshot. Okay, so again, we're reading Jacqueline Woodson's Harbor Me. In the last chapter that we read, chapter 23, our main character, Haley, who is who we hear the voice of, has gone 2 months into the future from where we had left off before. And her dad is home. Her dad has always been in prison. She has been raised by her uncle because her mother has passed away. And so she is having a hard time adjusting to life with a new grown-up in there. And it's somebody, and this is hard because this grown-up is somebody that is her dad. It's her biological father. There should be a connection, but she doesn't feel the connection. Okay. Now, some people in this room might make a connection to that, either having their biological parent not being the like active person in their life, right? Maybe you have a stepmom or a stepdad and you're not connected to your actual like bio dad. That's a connection that you could be making to her character. Okay. Or maybe you have a family member that has been incarcerated before. That is a connection that you can make to her character. You know what it feels like to have somebody that is away. Okay. So when we left her, she was listening to her recorder. She listens to a recorder and she records everything that happens in their meetings and she plays them back and she listens to them. And when we left her, she had just started listening to her story. It's a story we have not heard before. So hopefully it jumps into it here in chapter 24. All right, so again, I am looking for connections that I am making to my text. One last thing of advice. When you're doing reader's response journals, look at what you're supposed to be listening for first, so it's in your head. Otherwise, if you don't look at what you're looking for, you can miss it, and it might be harder to go back and come up with a connection if that's not what's in your mind to start. Okay? So, chapter 24. My uncle and I had been in the car for more than an hour and were finally out of the city. The tall buildings had shrunk down into trees and long ribbons of wild, dying grass. The sun wasn't up yet, and everything looked like it had been painted in black and dark blue. Years had passed since that afternoon on the slide. A tiny scar shaped like a Z ran from my hairline down behind my right ear. I reached up and ran my fingers along it. My uncle used to say being a parent meant long nights and short years. Some of you might have a scar that you go back and touch every once in a while and remember how you got it. That would be a connection that you can make to this story. I might write that down if that was something that I had. I have a scar on my leg that I remember exactly how it happened. Okay, so I could write that down as a connection on a sticky note that I can go back later and talk about. He said before anyone blinked, kids were grown up, packing their bags and moving on. But some things stayed. The scar, the memory of that day on the slide, my mother's nails, my voice on the recorder, Esteban's hug. I must have slept because when I looked out the window again, we were passing the New Paltz exit and the sun was beginning to rise over the mountains. The sky was burgundy and blue. I've only seen the sky this way, driving to Malone. It seems strange that there could be so much color and beauty. And then when you go to Malone, everything was tan and gray and black steel bars and wire. You know they found Esteban's dad in Florida, I said, staring out the window. Who? Esteban, the guy from my class, my friend. They took his dad, Esteban. My uncle glanced at me and nodded. Oh, right. I know who Esteban is, he said, but I didn't know his dad was gone. But I thought, and then I remembered. Of course I hadn't told him. We didn't talk to anyone outside the art room about the things we talked about inside it. We talked and talked and talked, but only to each other. The day before, Miss Laverne found the six of us sitting in the corner of the lunchroom, laughing at a character Tiago was mimicking. Even Esteban had thrown his head back and cracked up. We were all huddled into one another, shoulders pressing against shoulders, Holly's legs thrown over mine. Immigration took his dad, I told my uncle slowly. Oh, geez, Haley, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I can't believe this crap is happening right here in Brooklyn. I looked at him and said, Brooklyn's part of America. I felt tired. Was Esteban awake? Had he gotten another poem? Did they know anything else about what was happening? On Friday, he'd looked like he hadn't slept. He'd kept his head down in class most of the day. I didn't know how to tell my uncle all of this without getting so sad and feeling like a dumb kid who couldn't even help her friend. Hales, I'm so sorry, he said again. What next for them? What's the plan? Should I reach out to his mother? His mom is hoping some lawyers can do something, but he said she's packing and waiting. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. It suddenly felt like I was betraying Esteban, betraying the art room. My uncle was a grown-up. What did he understand about 6 kids talking? What did anybody besides me, Tiago, Holly, Amari, Esteban, and Ashton understand? Nothing. Nothing at all. Geez, my uncle said again. Yeah, I said, geez. Outside, the farther we got into the mountains, the faster the wind rushed past the car. I leaned against the window. My uncle drove in silence. The mountains went from burgundy to pink to green and brown. The sun, as always, rose. So that's the end of chapter 25. I had a couple of different connections that I made to this story. The first was the scar, that idea that like when I have a scar, I can remember exactly where it came from and what was happening that day. Sometimes I touch it and I can think about that moment. That's a connection I could make. Another connection that I could make to this story is that idea of thinking and feeling like no one outside of my group would ever understand what was happening. That idea that like me and my group of friends were the only ones that could totally and completely know what that was like. That is a connection that I can make. Okay, that's a personal connection. Now, I have also had friends and family that have been affected by immigration stuff, about like people that I know who know people that have been deported. So I could make a connection to that as well. That idea, like how Esteban's dad was taken away in the middle of the night, and the unknown of knowing what's going to happen. It's not something that's happened in my personal life, but I know of stories where that has happened, where people get pulled over and picked up and just disappear. So even though I can make that connection, it's not a personal connection that I can make because it hasn't happened in my life. I haven't felt that level of empathy for that. But the scar, 100%, I can feel that. That feeling of being the only people that would understand what something is like, I can understand that. So before we break off into Dear Time, where you're going to be working on your own, reading your book and thinking about what connections you can make in your reader's response, I want you to take a second and I want you to tell me in the chat box some sort of connection that you might have made with today's read aloud. Okay, I'm going to switch the chat box so that it only comes to me. No one else is going to see it. It's just going to come to me. And I want you to think about what, let's see, I'm clicking the wrong button. I want you to think about what one connection that you could make to today's story. Okay? And then we're going to start our Dear Time. Sound good?